What is going on, guys? Rodney here with Crypto Bros. Welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about Holochain. Holochain is actually one I've wanted to dive in and research for a while. It is a fairly complex project. There's a lot of information based on the things they're trying to do in this. This is also actually a viewer request video, so we are going to knock that out today. Before we jump into everything, though, I did just quickly want to say thank you to everyone who has been subscribing to the channel. I seriously appreciate the time. The little bit of time you kind of lend me, your attention every single week means a ton, so thank you. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, all you have to do is come over here, hit the subscribe button. As we jump into this, I'm going to go through a couple slides that I put together just to kind of help organize all the information I have. Then we'll check out some price points, look at their websites, and talk a little bit about the project there at the end and wrap this up. Try to keep this time friendly for you, although that is not my strength. All that being said, we will jump over to the slides. So Holochain. What I'm going to start with is actually talk about what it is not. So anytime you watch any type of these interviews, videos, check out their website, they are very adamant that Holochain is not a blockchain. Holochain itself is not just this one huge distributed ledger where every action is captured on it and stored. And anytime a new one is there, it has to be validated across the nodes. They're also not necessarily building an application on top of a blockchain. They're not even building a blockchain, so they wouldn't even be considered maybe a competitor to Ethereum or Bitcoin or any other ones. This is like a alternative solution. Completely new project, and it's based on what is the Metacurrency project, which actually started prior to the white paper being released in Bitcoin, and we'll look into that. It's a very physiological approach. It's just very different than everything we've seen in the space, and we'll kind of touch on that towards the end of the video. But what I found very interesting in checking out some of these videos from like 2009, they're still planning on and talking about the same concepts that they were talking about in the Metacurrency project that they're doing in Holochain. So anyway, we'll get into that. Another thing about it, there is no consensus like model with Holochain, but there is a kind of a distributed set of rules that any user who is active on Holochain actually has to play by, and that with that there is no massive processing power or crazy amounts of electricity involved to kind of work this system here. One thing I thought was really interesting is the fact that they're trying to make this so simple that you can actually run like a node off your cell phone. So anyway, now that we've kind of defined what Holochain isn't, let's talk about what it is. Holochain is an agent-centric system. To think about that in like the most simplest terms, it's like each person has their own blockchain, even though this isn't a blockchain, but has their own chain. So each person essentially has their own personal identifiable hash chain. Your identity is tied to that. With that, you actually control all your own actions for everything you do. Think about maybe like sending a crypto or on a decentralized app, making a post, sending a message. Everything is verified and signed with your own private key. This also actually helps tie into the fact that anybody doing anything malicious or that they shouldn't can be identified, and then a fix can be in place with that. As a user, you are writing directly to your own local source chain and sharing that to a distributed hash table. Distributed hash table is essentially like the public space that kind of keeps everything in check. So if you make an action, it gets shared to the distributed hash table. Essentially, this distributed hash table is needed in case a node or something goes offline so that data is not lost. So instead of thinking about like a typical blockchain, instead of every action being recorded on the blockchain, anything that you do kind of stays personal to you and your own identity. This is actually one of the basis where their huge amount of scalability comes into play. You'll never see like this is defined as transactions per second like you would with a blockchain. Another thing they're actually kind of working on, and we'll touch on this a little bit way later in the video, is a peer-to-peer internet. So main points here, not one crazy huge ledger. Each person has their own personal holochain, hash chain, however you want to call it. So what they're actually doing and building, they've created this framework that runs truly distributed applications. That means these applications are specific to whatever devices are running them. So if you and I have an app together, maybe on our cell phones, we're the only people that have this. This isn't like you would build an application and it goes off across the whole network. This is each individual app is truly distributed because it only runs on the device that it's built on. So with that, these can be private applications, private networks. You can manage them. You can choose who participates and set a specific set of rules within there. So there's no central party whatsoever. And really, this is like the basis of everything Holochain stands for. They're like a very big on like the social economic coherence, the experience, like working together as a community, man. And I really recommend watching some of their videos to just get a feel of the vibe that these guys have. Like they're not in it for like the money, and you'll even kind of see some of these trends play over when we actually talk about their tokens. But so since each person owns their own apps or their own actions, these apps are have the ability to scale to sizes as big as Twitter, as big as Facebook. Holochain actually has a peer-to-peer Twitter. It's very glitchy and new in that regard, and that's not me like dogging on it. That's coming from them themselves. They understand that in one of the interviews I saw, they're like, well, blockchain is way up here, and we are still way down at the bottom because we're just getting going with this brand new type of architecture that we're building. We'll talk about more of that in a second. What else do I got in here? So just like any other type of blockchain project, open source developers can build apps just like they could on a blockchain, but they'll actually be able to do that with Holochain. They have a magnitude of different languages that will be involved with that, so it won't be any more difficult for someone to build on top of Holochain versus anything else. They're really focused on the people running the application as a community, and they're focusing on simplicity in that. You might be wondering, do they have a working product? At this point, the code is already programmed, it's in their alpha, they've released software, and they already actually have hardware in place that kind of all ties all this together. The hardware stuff, I believe, is being released in Q3, and we'll talk about that when we get into their website, but they do have an initial release out called Adventure, and I think they just put another one out called Scout. In terms of their working applications, and I pulled this directly from an interview. They're talking about their version of the peer-to-peer Twitter. It does work. It's buggy a little bit, but they're gaining traction kind of in this process here. So right now, Holo token is actually the hot token. It is an ERC20 token, and it's just the placeholder token. So if you were to go on one of the exchanges that it's listed on, which is like IDEX, LA token, a couple other ones, you would actually be getting an ERC20 token that is a placeholder. Some issues with that in terms of when they go cross over to their actual more of a mainnet product. How are the wallet bases going to work, and will it be able to be on some of these larger exchanges? If you guys remember back to when IOTA went on to Binance, the wallet situation was locked for a long time because IOTA isn't necessarily a blockchain project. It kind of runs under the Tangle method. So for them to kind of build this out, there could be some issues there with liquidity, stuff like that in terms of price points. Not something I'm certainly concerned about. I do like the tech piece on this instead, but something to think about. So when their actual token launches, it's going to be called Holo Fuel. And Holo Fuel is not actually created from nothing like other crypto tokens and then assigned a price point. With this, it's kind of like a accounting-based system. There always needs to be an offsetting debit for any credit made on the system. So very interesting project there. And then the actual Holo Fuel token can actually expand and contract based on the need within the network. So really interesting concepts there, especially things that we haven't seen yet in this space. And if we really just kind of think about that in general, blockchain is already the hot new thing, and people are just now kind of getting, the masses are just now getting acclimated with it. Are they going to be able to adopt a whole new kind of network? Are they going to want to? Do they care to? So, perception and adoption, could be an issue long term. In terms of some use cases, social media applications, especially with the scaling and what they're saying they can do in terms of scaling, gig economy, supply chain, identity management, the sharing economy, all those type of things are going to be applicable on this platform. And again, when we're talking about some of the moves they're making in a peer-to-peer internet, same concepts where we've seen where there is going to be that sharing community based, but just kind of a different approach. And again, one thing I really liked about this, and you really have to watch some of their videos to just get this philosophical approach that they have. It's very different than everybody else's in their outlook, and you kind of see that, and you almost are like, man, these hippies, right? But it's really, really cool. Stuff like that really attest to me. It's not like they have these bank advisory boards that are doing all this stuff. They want like a common good. So really interesting piece there. Now that these are over, I understand that was the painful part, but I definitely needed some help. Kind of lining up their information because there is so much. One video I highly recommend watching is actually this one right here, Holochain, a blockchain alternative interview with Matthew Schutte. It is an hour, chunk it up, really, really good video, just kind of talking about, just gives you an idea of like the basis for the blockchain, and then going into the tech. And then also this Holochain Explained video is really good as well. This is on their website. This just kind of breaks down the agent-centric system and how all that would work. As we get over to look at price points, like everything else, it is down in the market, trading well under a penny. If you're curious as to where you can get it, IDEX, LA Token, Hotbit, FAT and Radar Relay. In terms of the charting, looks very similar to everything else we've seen in the last, month or so. Solid run up out the gates, long retracement back down. Interesting pieces, though, on their current hot token. 133 billion tokens circulating, and then a total supply of 177 billion. Depending on how you want to look at that, that's totally up to you. But interesting piece here, total market cap under $50 million. If we actually just look at what the all-time high is, it's only 26 Satoshis, currently trading at 6 Satoshis. But I do want to jump into there. And actually one notable piece here is, very active on their GitHub. There's a lot of information on there, and a lot of it is started all the way back with that Metacurrency project. And if you can actually check it out here. So here's some videos literally from 2009. I've watched these. A lot of the same concepts are overlapping when they're talking about Holo. So really interesting to see. If you guys actually want to check out the Metacurrency website, it is metacurrency.org. And this is like kind of the core basis and principles that have rolled over into Holochain. It says, there are core principles and patterns involved in generating lush, thriving, abundant living systems. And you'll see like a lot of the things they're doing with Holochain are based on these living systems. And it says, we have created a living system model of wealth which enables communities and organizations to build deep wealth rather than just shallow accumulation of number of bank accounts. And then again, so talking about that living systems model, and they're really tying this into like the basis of Holochain in its own. To hit their websites, though, it is holochain.org. Think outside the blocks. I actually think that's awesome. Here was the video that I talked about that kind of describes how the actual the chain works. I don't really want to play this, but just give you guys an idea here. So each of I'm not sure if you can see that, each of these people on here is technically an individual agent holding on to their own Holochain. And this piece in the middle is their DHT, and it kind of just talks about how the system functions. As we get down in here, we actually see some pretty cool kind of testimonials. Holochain is talking Mozilla's language. This is from Jim Cook, who is the Mozilla CFO and co-founder of Netflix. And there's a couple other ones that they have on their, they actually have 2 websites, but that we can check out in a second. And then this is just kind of the basis and some of the things that we've talked about. It's a versatile solution, decentralization with no bottlenecks and no adaptable validation. When you kind of watch some of their, other videos and things that are out there, it's a lot of stuff. It's like, blockchain versus, what Holochain is and what their process is. And the number one thing they say is like, look, there is no bottlenecks because we're not this one giant chain where everything has to transact on. Again, peer-to-peer, no centralized servers, no ledgers, no middlemen, and then agent-centric, individual authority over data sharing, access, and storage. And this is a cool piece here to read. I'm not going to go through this, but definitely recommend kind of checking this out, because not only are they working on this whole technological side with how their chain functions, but it's really for like the greater good of the human-oriented internet. I would definitely say watch all the videos that they kind of have, only for the fact that it just gives you a better understanding of where these guys are coming from and how it all ties into their project. Holochain helps people. These are very people-oriented folks here. So it says, you own your own chain, control their identity, connect applications to suit their needs, transact without centralized systems, build lighter, faster, cheaper applications. You can kind of keep going through some of this stuff here, but overall, guys, once you kind of dive into this, you actually just get a good understanding of how much different this is from the normal blockchain solution, whether that's business focused or this or that. So really, really cool, really admirable too. And I can see why this is hot, just because it is so different. But anyway, so right here it starts talking more into the tech. Holochain Holochain applications are held entirely by people. No trusted third parties, no central points of failure. They enable direct architectural consent and cryptographic communication that are at low risk and low cost. Especially when they start talking about this and the people that are active in doing this. So if there's a bunch of people interacting on an application and someone no longer wants to play by those rules or kind of follow the the groundwork that's laid within whatever this app may be, they can up and leave and do something else or create their own that would be better suited for them, and then anybody who wants to jump in can. So again, guys, just recommend checking out some of their videos just so you can get an understanding of what is going on. We'll go through this part and then I'll kind of wrap this guy up so we don't get too long, but it says low cost, lightweight, and secure. Every application runs its own holochain on its own terms with cheaper hosting overhead. Since users are the actual host, as more agents use the app, the hosting power and storage becomes available. The load gets lighter. Each agent source chain holds its own DNA. The code that runs the app, its pure validation requirements ensure secure applications. The data cannot be counterfeited, tampered with, or even lost. Each app stores its data within the validating DHT, creating redundancy of public data across the randomized nodes. So this would be the, in terms of their model here, this would kind of be like the holochain in itself working, and then this is kind of that public space, the DHT that kind of stores everything. So anyway, all that being said, they do have another website, and it is called holo.host. Again, a couple of videos on here. Talks about the success they had with their ICO. One interesting piece here is they actually call it a initial community offering instead of an initial coin offering, and that kind of ties back into anytime you want to get a token once Holo Fuel comes on board, there has to be a debit for every time there is crediting, and that kind of accounting system that flexes based on the need. So check some of these out. A couple more testimonials, talks about some of their partnerships, goes through the roadmap. If you guys want to check out their GitHub, there's a ton of activity on here. Their white paper is also on this. Again, I muscled through this. This was hard. This is like a tough read, especially when you're trying to put all this together. But going through this and then watching kind of that interview where they talk about everything, it really does, and they kind of mentioned that in there, it really does help tie everything together. So anyway, guys, that is what I have for Holochain. Just to kind of wrap it up and give you guys my overall thoughts, I actually think this is a really cool project. It's very early in the stages though, so again, if we think about blockchain, it's kind of been around since, I don't know, almost 10 years at this point. And while this has too, this is just now, starting to gain its traction. Yes, they have code written. Yes, they have other things in place, but still very new project, very new technology that is kind of coming out for this. In the long term, especially based on the fact that the market cap is only, $50 million, in terms of like a ROI standpoint, I think there's a ton of potential here. And what really sold me on this project, and no, I'm not invested in this, just to be upfront, but what sold me on this was the fact it's the people, what they're trying to accomplish, what their ideologies are, how it works together. I just thought that was really awesome. Again, this is new, so there's going to be a ton of risk involved, but I think this is a super awesome project. So anyway, guys, that is what I have for you today. Enjoy your weekend, and I will catch you guys later.